RBI DEPR 2023 Phase 1 exam has been conducted on 16th of July, and afterwards I received queries from some students regarding the expected cutoff. Also, some students had sent a message seeking guidance on how to prepare for Phase 2. So the purpose of this video is to discuss about cutoff, and regarding Phase 2, we will try to have a separate video. Right, so now let's begin. So we are going to build this video in this way. First, we are going to discuss what kind of questions were asked in paper 1. Then we will have a look at the kind of questions asked in paper 2, and then we will have a discussion on expected cutoff. So let's move ahead. We begin with paper 1. Paper 1 was divided into two sections, Section A and Section B. Section A consisted of 2 markers and Section B consisted of 1 marker. So all 2 markers from all subjects were clubbed in Section A only. Similarly, all 1 markers from all subjects were clubbed in Section B. Section B had 70 marks as the maximum mark. Section A had 70 marks as the maximum mark, and Section B had 30 marks. Now, this means there were a total of 65 questions adding up to 100 marks. Now, from what topics were questions asked? Basically, questions were from micro, macro, and basic statistics. From econometrics, there were only 1 or 2 questions. For example, one question was on definition of multicollinearity. Then there was one question asking of the on the topic simultaneous equation models and how to correct for different biases. Basically, how to correct for over-identified system. From the remaining topics also, the questions were in basic category only, and most of those questions fell in easy to moderate category. For example, there was a question from normal distribution. In fact, 2 questions from normal distribution. One was regarding if we do sampling from normal distribution, what are the properties? Then there was a question, separate question, only on normal distribution, which was on properties of normal distribution. Given 4 statements, 3 or 4 statements, you had to pick the correct one. Similarly, they maintained their trend of asking a question from binomial distribution. From the last 3 years, I am seeing a question on the binomial distribution. Maybe in fact, even from the last 4 years, that is from 2019 onward. Similarly, there was a question on skewness. There were other questions also. For example, from macro, there were a question on Marshall-Lerner condition. Then there was also a question on Manrega provisions. Right. Similarly, other topics also. For example, CAPM was also asked. From microeconomics, questions consisted from topics of elasticity, deadweight loss calculation, and public goods, Pareto optimality meaning, and other such questions. Now, what was the level of question? Like I already mentioned, level of question was basic to moderate only. That means most of the questions were of the level which were asked in 2022 examination. So, for example, in 2022, there were 3 markers and 4 markers also. So, those questions, the 3 markers and 4 markers, involved lengthy calculation. For example, one question was on F ratio. Then another question was on pure exchange economy. So, when 3 markers and 4 markers had been dropped this year, so the scope of such lengthy questions reduced. Therefore, they had not included such questions. But the remaining questions, the 1 markers and 2 markers, most of them were almost identical level as asked in 2022 examination. Right. Apart from that, there were also questions from, let's say, contemporary issues, such as they'd asked, given one report and asked which organization has released that report. And like I already mentioned, there were questions on Manrega as well. Now, candidates who have kept their preparation broad-based have benefited and have done well. Now, I'll give you some examples of how keeping a preparation broad-based helped candidates. Let's move ahead. This is my 3rd year of guiding candidates for this exam. In 2021, we had prepared only 2 full-length mock tests, just 2 weeks before the exam. For 2022 and for 2023, we had a full-length test series for Phase 1. For 2024, of course, we will be having a full course. I'll mention the details at a later point. The only thing that I want to mention here is that when people are preparing for these examinations, sometimes they tend to focus too much on a particular or on the questions asked in a particular year. For example, see this question. This was a question from the test series, and I had prepared this question last year. That is before the 2022 exam. Now, when at least some of the candidates saw such questions, many of them felt that such questions are not so important for the DEPR exam because DEPR exam is a numerical based. And why did they have that perception? Because they had seen the 2021 paper, or at least if they had not seen the 2021 paper, whoever told them that this is a numerical based exam only had seen primarily the 2021 paper. And whoever told this to me, that such questions are generally not asked, I used to tell them very simple fact, that was question. So there were similar questions in 2019 exam. So do not think that such questions do not get asked. You have to keep your preparation broad-based. You have to cover theoretical aspects, factual questions, and numerical. Only then you are well prepared for these exams. If you do not cover all these three dimensions, then you are leaving yourself to the mercy of the examiner. कि जो आपने guess किया है वही question आया तो ठीक है. Otherwise, you are going to be losing out on important marks. Now, if such easy questions, it is easy to predict. Similarly, the next point that I want to convey is that previous year questions for these examinations are crucial. For example, consider this question. This question was also from the same test. This was Macro 2 test in our test series. The definition of primary deficit had been asked in 2021 paper to a numerical. This question was there even in that year in our test. Okay. So they had given some numbers and they had told you to calculate primary deficit. We could easily calculate it from from this definition. Similarly, in 2023, there was a simple question on primary deficit. So first, you have to keep your preparation broad-based. Second point, keep strong hold of previous year questions. Moving on. Similarly, in our test series, we had a question on Harrod-Doman model, and this was the solution panel for that question. Clearly, if you know this formula, if you know what different parameters stand for, you could have easily attempted that 2023 question on Harrod-Doman model. Right, 2023. And again, this is a question from previous year question. In 2022 examination, there was a numerical on Harrod-Doman model, and this particular question was in our mock test even last year. So even people who had enrolled last year would have been able to solve that 2022 actual question Harrod-Doman model, because it was based directly on this particular formula, and this question was exactly, or rather almost identical. Apart from numbers, the question was exactly the same. Now, the next two questions that I'm putting forward, they gave me much more satisfaction than these. Okay, because all these three examples which I gave you, they were questions from which I formed last. This was a question which I formed this year. So to construct, for example, just see the second statement. To construct confidence interval for population variance, we use chi-square distribution. Of course, this was an incorrect statement. But the very fact that a question on this type can be asked, I could anticipate and I could communicate that even through the video code. I had communicated that such questions can be asked. And when a question similar to this statement was asked regarding the procedure for calculating confidence interval for difference of means, it was satisfying, to be honest. And much more than that, the next question was that. In one of our subject tests on macroeconomics, we had this question. And if you have appeared for the 2023 DEPR examination, you would know that there was a question on this particular statement. And honestly, this question gave me the maximum satisfaction. Out of all the questions that may have appeared from the test series into the final exam, this question gave me the maximum satisfaction. Now, the reality is that a lot of hard work goes into the formation of questions for the test, right? And if such questions appear in the exam, if it makes me feel that I have managed to contribute something to the performance of students enrolled in the test series, honestly, it makes me feel good. I think I appeared for the first IBPS exam somewhere around 2017. And that particular exam I had cleared. And after that, I have worked in some organization, in that organization only, for a decently long enough period. That stay provides me a decent understanding of the priorities internal. And whatever the internal priorities are of the organization, questions do come based on it. So whenever I feel that I've been able to leverage that understanding for the benefit of someone, it makes me feel good. And I think that's why this question gave me the maximum satisfaction. Of course, if you are enrolled in the test series, you understand that this is not an exhaustive list. Many other questions in the final exam, you would have got some help from the test series. And in the comment section, you can mention whatever you felt about this test. Right? So now let's move ahead to the understanding of paper. And like I always tell you, if you are enrolled in any test series of the world, then to be able to make good use of it, you have to attempt the mock test well in advance of the actual. Because if you attempt them at the last moment, then what will happen is you are only going to see what is the question and what is the answer. On the other hand, if you attempt them well in advance, it gives you the opportunity of going to the solution panel and the links shared in the solution panel thoroughly. When you do that, you will have a holistic understanding of that particular topic. So if any question is asked from that particular topic, it will be useful for you, right? So let's see the kind of questions that were asked in paper. Paper 2 was on English descriptive, and until the last year, that is until 2022, this paper used to be a part of Phase 2 exam. But in 2023, RBI has revised the pattern and this paper was a part of paper 1. That is Phase 1. Okay, so these were the questions asked this year in 2023. There was a question on essay, letter, précis, and reading comprehension. I think this was expected by almost all candidates. The marks devoted to each of them are indicated here, and also the number of words indicative are meant. Right. So this is an approximate number. In some of the essays, I think it was 500 also. So approximately 500 to 520. This was the word limit. Similarly, in letter writing, I think the word limit was around 150 to 170. And similarly for précis, you had to write approximately these many. Now let's go ahead and see how many options are what different questions came from it. So when we talk of the essay portion, we had 4 topics given to us, and out of these 4 topics, we had to write an essay on one of the topics. Similarly, for letter, we had 3 topics given to us, and from these 3 topics, we had to choose one and write a formal letter on any one of these topics. Moving on. Essay topics were more or less on expected lines. For example, the first topic was on climate change, and if you remember well, when we were discussing the test 5, in the test 5 discussion video, that is the essay test 5 discussion videos, I had mentioned this point, right? Now, the next question is, what changed after 1992? मतलब temperature बढ़ता हुआ तो पहले भी दिख रहा होगा, right? So see, the thing is, ये जो पूरा system हुआ कि बहुत ज़्यादा fossil fuels की emission हुई and all those things, India did not play too much of a role in that, right? Give it that to, अगर आप per capita basis पे देखोगे तो हम और बहुत पीछे हैं in terms of emission. So India's argument is it was the Western countries जिन्होंने इतनी emission किया और जिन्होंने situation को खराब किया. Now जब India का grow करने का time आया, in the sense that now it is not only a requirement for us to grow, but even many things are right and people are expecting that, let's say, over the next 20 years or so, India is going to do well in many dimensions. Okay. Now, so India says that Western countries spoiled everything. Now, when it is our time to grow, when it is our time to expand. So what is going to happen when you are going to expand? Of course, your energy demand is going to rise. तो आप और ज़्यादा energy consume करोगे, शायद और ज़्यादा fossil fuels की burning होगी और climate change पे contribution आएगा ही आएगा. So basically, India's contribution is now rising. But the thing is, now Western world is saying, देखो climate change है. So थोड़ा ध्यान रखो, इतनी energy emissions नहीं होनी चाहिए. We should come together. We should find a solution. All those things. So India generally, in international forums, India generally says that, boss, see, I understand all your issues, but I have my own concerns. My concern is that I'm a developing country, which means a majority of my population needs support. We are not already a big country. We are, in the sense that we are not only economically, we are not very big country. तो हमें बहुत से measures लेने पड़ते हैं, support भी करना पड़ता है population को, economic growth भी हमें fast चाहिए ताकि हमारी population में poverty etc. कम हो पाए. So if you want us to take steps to control climate change, if you want us to reduce or limit our emissions of carbon, then you have to support us. How exactly should you support us? आप हमें टेक्नोलॉजी दो जिससे कि हम कम एमिशन में वही सब चीज़ें कर पाएँ, तो हमारी एमिशन इंटेंसिटी कम हो, कार्बन फुटप्रिंट कम. आंसर्स में ऐसे ऐसे शब्द लिख दो, थोड़ा अच्छा लगता है एग्जाम को पढ़ने. एंड लाइक आई प्रॉमिस्ड यू अर्लियर, इफ यू फॉलो द एस्से टेस्ट वेल, दैट इज इफ यू प्रिपेयर कंटेंट, इफ यू प्रैक्टिस, it is going to be useful, and I hope you found it useful. So question number 1, the topic number 1, that is, and topic number 3 were more or less expected topic, and I think you would have sufficient content to write on them. Similarly, this topic is very general. So if you have a decent understanding of economy and whatever good things are there in the economy, if you just combine the discussion from all of our tests and you just pick out the good thing, good points, and you just put it in the form of a good structure, you can write an essay on this topic. Right. So the questions under the essay topics were more or less on the expected time. Moving on. The topics of formal letters were also fairly easy. These were the topics given to you and you had to write a formal letter on any one of these topics. In the first topic, you were told to imagine yourself to be working with an NGO and which is working to clean up ocean. And you had to write a letter to the HR head of a company seeking CSR grant, that is corporate social grant under corporate social responsibility. In the second, you were told that you are working with a company and you had to write a letter to the IT department head requesting that person to arrange a training session on MS Excel for your employee. In the third topic, you were told that you are working with a company and let's say the employees of that company have bank account, let's say salary account with a particular bank, and these people are facing issues regarding different things on their bank account. So you had to write a letter to the bankers telling them or requesting them to come and hold regular workshops for the employees so that they can address their issues in a better way. Moving on, having discussed these two papers, now let's begin the understanding of what cutoff can be. Now let's see what RBI's notification tells us about the procedure for arriving at the cutoff. It says that candidates who secure the minimum aggregate mark in paper 1 and paper 2 of phase 1 as prescribed will be shortlisted for phase 2 of the exam. The minimum aggregate cutoff marks of being shortlisted for phase 2 of the examination will be decided by the board in relation to the number of vacancies. So that's all. Now, the first sentence, it gives the impression that they want to have a separate cutoff for paper 1 and paper 2. It's not 100% sure, but the first sentence at least gives us that impression. And of course, it says that the roll number of the candidates shortlisted for phase 2 examination will be published on RBI website tentatively within a week after phase 1. Now, if our understanding that there will be separate cutoff for paper 1 and paper 2, if that understanding turns out to be correct, in that case, we will have one cutoff for English paper and one cutoff for economic paper. For the English descriptive paper, it is not feasible to judge the cutoff because it is completely in their hand. It is up to them to decide whether they want to give marks leniently or they want to be strict with checking. Because see, in the 2022 examination for English descriptive, they have been very lenient. The highest marks in English descriptive paper were 82. I mean, it's not something which is common. Generally, it's not so lenient. Of course, in the previous years, you will see that it is not as strict as maybe UPSC does, but still not as lenient as this one. Therefore, to get to a cutoff for English is almost not really realistic, right? So it depends on what they decide and it depends on what you will. So you will be judged relative to other candidates. Your write-ups vis-a-vis other candidates, and based on that, you will get marks. They can give lenient marks also and strict marks. Let's discuss only the economic paper. Moving on. Now, to arrive at some guesstimate about the 2023 economics paper cutoff, let's begin with a historical analysis of the economics paper cutoff. So, in the panel year 2019, there were approximately 20 vacancies across all categories in India, right? Across all categories. In that year, what was the cutoff? For phase 1, the cutoff for general category was 52.67. And what was the level of paper that year? It was mathematical, heavily mathematical, but there were other questions also. There were questions from mathematical topics, rigorously mathematics, for example, questions from matrix approach to algebra and all other mathematical portion, as well as some bit of factual questions. For example, how much was the growth rate? How much was the fiscal deficit in the previous financial year? What is the growth rate of Indian GDP in the present financial year? Some bit of factual questions are also there, right? In the next year, so in 2020, there was no exam, of course, because of COVID. In the 2021 panel year, there were 29 vacancies across all categories and the cutoff was 47.83. And what was the level of paper? It was purely mathematical. There was hardly any question based on factual nature. So no questions from Indian economy, primarily a mathematical paper. Now let's move to the next. In 2022, if you have appeared for this paper, I think you will agree that the level of paper was, in some sense, at least many people felt that the level of paper was on easier side compared to the previous years of 2019 and 2021. In fact, many people after appearing for phase 1 paper in 2022 believe that cutoff will go very high. It will touch 55, it will touch 60 and all, right? Because they felt the paper was very easy. However, when the result came, when the cutoff came, the cutoff was shown to be 41 marks for general category. In this particular year, there were 31 vacancies across all categories, right? And consequently, in this year, in 2023, like I've already mentioned, the 1 markers and 2 markers were very similar to that which were asked last year. Of course, last year there were 3 and 4 markers also, which were not there in this year's paper. So in my opinion, what I believe is that cutoff might rise a bit, but I'm not expecting it to go till 60 and all. And let me elaborate that on a bit. So see, let's say if there is any CS candidate, let's take your example, most probably you might have attempted the number of questions in this range, either in this range, right? 56 to 62. That's the general idea which I've got after speaking to some of the candidates. So that means even if you have left out just, let's say, 3 questions, then you are fighting for 95 marks. If every question is right, then you might get somewhere around 95 marks. Of course, if you are talking of the lower limit, then let's say you are talking of something lower, maybe something around, let's say, 85 marks. Okay, now let's take the average. Okay, let's say you have attempted a paper of 90 marks. Now, it is highly unlikely that you would be getting all right. I have been conducting mock tests for about 2-3 years now, and whenever you attempt a mock test on my portal, I generally have a look at the performance from backend. So I know that even the best of candidates do not have 100% accuracy, right? So most probably some of these questions are going to be wrong. Let's say that you've answered 10 marks worth of questions incorrectly. So you reduce 10 from here, you reach 80. Of course, there has to be some negative marking also. So if let's say negative marking is approximately 3, then you are arriving at approximately 77 as your mark. Of course, we have made many assumptions. You attempted 90 marks, only 10 marks worth of it is correct. And what we have got is, in my opinion, a best case scenario. Of course, there can be someone who is above this level. I don't deny that. But it's most likely that person is going to be an outlier. It's not that 50 or 100 people are going to be above 75 or 80. That's not what I am expecting at least, right? Second point is about the number of vacancies. In this year, that is in 2023 paper, there are 38 vacancies. That means they need approximately 350 to 380 people for phase 2. Now, going by my experience, I believe that candidates who have prepared the entire syllabus properly, practiced and gone for the exam, it's not that high. Generally, you will find it in the range of 150, let's say 150 to 200. That's the max. Other candidates are generally, for example, they've left some syllabus, they've not practiced, something of that. So many of these cases are going to be incorporated, and not everyone is going to get a score of, let's say, 77 out. So many will get a relatively lower score, let's say 60, 65, somewhere around that. And many still will get a lower score. At the end of the day, they need a sizable number of people. If you compare this to other exams, let's say the SEBI exam, the PFRD exams which are conducted for economics discipline, and if you, in that paper, in that thing, there are generally 2 papers in phase 1. One is the basic aptitude paper and the other one is economic. If you have a look at the cutoff for economic, you will see it's not very high. Like, even though there used to be less number of vacancies, they generally shortlist around 300 people for phase 2 and the cutoff is not very high. Of course, there is also aptitude paper and many people end up doing not so well in aptitude papers. The cutoff goes low. Still, the cutoff you will be is relatively on the lower side. And what is the reason? we tend to sometimes not catch our mistakes after coming out. So at this point of time, if you are feeling that you are going to get let's say 70 marks, there is a high probability that your actual marks might end up being a little lower side as compared to this one. And if you do not agree, you can just recall your previous examples and just try to think. If when you appeared for other exam, let's say SEBI exam or any other exam, if you anticipated getting X marks, did you actually get less or exactly X? Right. So in short, I'm not expecting the cutoff to go till 60 for this particular paper. The cutoff might rise a bit and ultimately it might settle somewhere around 50. That's my guess estimate. And of course, I can be wrong, but this is what I feel. So let's move ahead now. So what does all this discussion imply for you? The first point you should notice, you will not know the cutoff and your marks till the final result. So now phase 1 has been conducted, then phase 2 will be conducted, then there will be interview of selected candidates, then there will be final result, and after 2 weeks of the final result, you will get an idea of the cutoff and your marks at different stages. Right? So you will not know the cutoff before that. That's the first. Second thing, what are we saying? Why does RBI not tell you your marks right now? Because the belief is that will help you perform to the best of your capability. And what is the logic? See, let's say if you are appearing only for a single paper, let's say in the entire process there is only one paper. If you have no other other background and you're not feeling too up, too low about it, so you will go and you might appear in a way. Now, if there is only one paper, some people might end up doing above their true potential. Some people might end up doing below their true. On the other hand, when there are more number of papers, it is highly likely that one paper you might do above your potential, but in another paper you might do, let's say, below your potential. So ultimately they want to get to your true potential. Now, if you already know, let's say that you performed very well in one paper, let's say in phase 1 you've done very well, there's a possibility someone might get a little complacent. On the other hand, if you know that you have not done exceptionally well in phase 1, let's say you are told that you are just 5 marks above the cutoff, that person might be low. I'm already very, very much around the cutoff and might already feel demotivated to appear for phase 2. We do not want anything of that stuff. That's why we do not tell you your mark. And you already understand. The only relevant question at this stage is whether you are going for phase 2 or not. Yes or no. That is the only relevant. If at this stage you believe that you've attempted the paper in above average way, then there's a high probability you might end up going for phase 2. If you go for phase 2, if you are called for phase 2, then you should not be thinking of where you have scored, that you've scored more or less. That's not going to help you in any way. Your objective should be to maximize yours. Even if you feel that somewhere you might have scored a little less and given up some of your edge in phase 1, you should be going to phase 1 with the mindset that you want to score 75 plus in both the paper. That is, you want to gain an edge in phase 2. And it is possible. If you have a look at the marks scored by selected candidates last year, you will find cases wherein people have scored relatively lower marks in phase 2, but they could capitalize in their phase 2 papers and scored really well and gained an edge there. Once you qualify for interview, then there is a high probability that if you get good marks in interview, then good marks can be really good. And if that happens, you're giving yourself a very good chance to qualify for this post, right? Similarly, there are people who have done exceptionally well in, let's say, phase 1 or phase 2, but they've got lesser marks in interview. And interview stage at times can be uncertain. That means whether you are expecting relatively lesser marks in phase 1 or you are expecting very high marks in phase 1. That's fine. That's past. Your entire focus should now be on phase 2. You have to look to maximize your score in phase 2, whether you are in this category or in this category, or you are, let's say you do not know where you stand, but that's irrelevant. You have to attempt to get 75 plus in both the papers. That's where your entire focus should be now. Right, so begin with an analysis of the syllabus. See what the syllabus is, how to prepare different topics. I will also try to prepare one video for you regarding how you can go about phase 2. Apart from that, I will also post the previous year question, that is the last year's question, which were asked in phase 2. Of course, this time the pattern is different, but I think still you'll get some idea. Right. And those, I did not appear for phase 2 last year, so I do not know what exactly questions were there, but I'm posting what I was told by different candidates. So that's all that I wanted to communicate to you in this video. I hope you found it useful. Please begin phase 2 preparation very seriously now, because see, even if RBI takes 1 to 2 weeks to give you a result, there can be someone who is not very confident. There can be someone who is not preparing for phase 2 from now onwards. And when that person will get a call later on, that person will already feel that I have missed out on 1 or 2 weeks. This happens every year. There are some people who fall in this category. It happened last year also, right? On the other hand, person who is not thinking about all that and just beginning to prepare for the phase 2, what will happen? At the most, if you feel you're on borderline, if you do not get a call, you can stop then. But if you don't start from now and you end up getting phase 2 call, and you're not going to be very happy about missing out on 1 or 2 weeks. On the other hand, if you've not done justice to these 2 weeks or 1 week, whatever, and a person, your competitor, is working hard, there is a possibility that person might be able to take edge in phase 2, and you have to attempt to be in this category. Work very hard from now onwards, attempt to get a strong edge in phase 2, right? So with that note, I'll stop here, and I hope you found this video useful.